Final Fight 3, published and released by Capcom in 1995. I decided to look into playing this game for my own research purpose, to see what kind of stuff was bad about the game. I read reviews about it and people were constantly bashing on it, so I figured the best way to gather my own opinion would be to play the game myself. One note I had to look out for was slowdown. According to an article in the Nintendo magazine, Final Fight 3 had slowdown so severe it froze time into reverse like the end of the original Superman movie. While I realized I may not experience some of the slowdown the people who played the original did, since I had access to it online, I felt it was still important to gather some of my own research towards the matter. To start, the game throws you in, which isn't a bad thing, but there's not much in terms of preparation for the game. The start menu was quite bland and boring when compared to other games at the time. To show a comparison, the same year, 1995, Capcom released Mega Man 7, a far more colourful game. Some may say it's an unfair comparison because of what each game was going for, and the fact they were completely different genres. But I'd like to state this is completely opinion, and just my way of pointing out a preferred style, and why Final Fight 3 looks so bland and boring in my eyes. I decided to play Mega Man 7 as well, to see how the first part of that played out. Looking at the footage, you can see both games parallel each other. Both start with an opening cutscene before the menu, and it works really well in my opinion for both. But Mega Man just has better animation. Both support a simple animation style, in terms of not moving much, but Mega Man manages to pull it off much better and much cleaner. This follows through for the gameplay animation as well. After starting up the game, Mega Man has an opening cutscene of sorts, and I really enjoy that honestly. It's something I'd like to try and implement in my game if I have the time. But the game has much brighter colours and just overall a better aesthetic going for it. Both games start straight out from the last one. Final Fight does it through text, whereas Mega Man has a full cutscene taking place before the title screen pops up. It's a lot more charming. While I appreciate what both games aimed for, I feel Mega Man just pulled it off better. I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fight's art style, and the realistic looking sprites are just pulled off in a way I'm not too keen on. When comparing it to others, like Street Fighter, it makes me question why Capcom wasn't able to hit the mark within this one as well. The style aside, Final Fight 3 lacks in the art department overall. The animations feel off and kind of clunky, while they fail to fit your player's speed. I noticed, while playing, my player would walk faster than his animation could keep up. The controls for both games differ drastically. Final Fight's controls felt weird, and half the time it felt as if it wasn't controlling him. With my character aimlessly reaching out in a scripted moment, I didn't activate with the press of a button. Whereas Mega Man's controls, while hard on a keyboard, worked well and were responsive in time. That's something my research for nearly everyone has pointed out is important for a beat'em up. The thing I want to avoid is a closed-in space. I'm not too big a fan of that. Final Fight 3, as mentioned, has a very linear pathway to move through, as did most beat'em ups at the time. I've come to find I prefer the more open and varied spaces of River City Ransom Underground, or a linear path with a more appealing cartoony aesthetic to it with Scott Pilgrim. It's strange how I like one massively, striving to make something that looks as good as that, yet I can't stand the look of another. Maybe it's the animation. Maybe it's because the colours are kind of bland and washed out. One thing's certain, I definitely want to avoid making those same choices within my game. Moving along, I'd like to mention the Stage 1 boss fight, again, choosing to compare this to another game, this time Castle Crashers, and Scott Pilgrim. Take a look at both Scott Pilgrim and Castle Crashers' first level bosses. Both have a clear arena, if you will, a clear space in which the battle will take place. It's closed off and shows you need to prepare for something incoming. Whereas Final Fight's boss battle was unknowing, I had no indication a boss fight was about to go down. No clear health bar or way of letting the player know. I thought he was just another enemy for most of the fight. It lacks that sense of a boss battle, and there's definitely something I want to work on avoiding. I want to make sure the player knows they are about to initiate in a boss battle. For me, Capcom left the space too open. They could have had some thugs standing on the other side letting the player know they can't go backwards. It's something I never considered before playing this game. The boss fight felt too much like an enemy. Sure, he was bigger, but it wasn't much from the normal guys. I don't personally mind recycled enemies, but I like it when they include a bigger boss with different moves and way of tackling them. It felt too much like I was fighting another thug. It got boring after a while. Going back to Castle Crashers and Scott Pilgrim with the space, they give you the space to move around and keep the action quite fast-paced during the boss fights. It feels more intimidating. It probably goes back to my dislike of the closed-in space and all. In conclusion, there's a lot I want to avoid in my game that Final Fight does in theirs. Stuff that for me makes the game feel so bland and washed out. I can't get into it as much as I could with more modern beat-em-ups. I feel it's an unfair opinion having not been too familiar with the series as a whole, but after playing this, there are definitely stuff I want to make a conscious effort to avoid falling into.